Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Waterline writers, for putting up with me all these times. This particular story was originally a one-act play written for the Chicago dramatist production. And unfortunately, I couldn't get it going there. And then I had going to try it out for the Barrington Writers Workshop that had a little theater. Then it got selected as one of their selections. And going to direct, produce the whole thing, and they lost their theater. So with that string of good luck, I decided to make it into a short story, and here we are. Too late for Bob. The Union Pacific passenger train platform was a dark and cheerless place at 5:45 on a Tuesday evening. The presence of over 50 warm-blooded souls gathered elbow to elbow along its plank deck did nothing to diminish the bleak aspect as the first cottony flakes of snow began to fall. Though the ranks of commuters were hardly military in their alignment, they did have the look of overdressed tenpins. Breath steam rose from between clenched teeth like so many chimney pots. The tardy 5:30 express to Westmont seemed a glacial age away. Joe wore rubbers on his feet, a hat with actual ear flaps, a long scarf wound around his neck, and an Arctic knee-length coat hung from his narrow shoulders and encased his spindly arms. On his hands were rabbit fur-lined gloves, secured to the coat sleeves by a pair of clips, his mother's idea. Safe inside this mobile bunker, Joe stood in his wool suit and striped necktie with half of a peanut butter sandwich still wrapped in wax paper flattened in his jacket breast pocket. He would eat the leftover from his sack lunch on the train ride home. As was his habit, Joe never turned his head to search for the train. Blessed with distinctly wall-eyed eye placement and a skull of narrow dimensions, he had the gift of extraordinary peripheral vision. Joe always knew what was going on around him. Tonight, his eyes were fixed and unfocused. He concentrated on a frustrating conversation with his mother, who was shouting at the other end of the cell phone he held swallowed in his fat glove. "I heard you the first time, Mother," he said. "No need to repeat." He eased the earpiece from his unprotected ear where he had folded up the flap, while she shouted as though through a 40-knot gale. When the blast subsided, he exhaled. "Broccoli, cheddar cheese, unsalted saltine crackers, a can of Van Camp's pork and beans, vegetarian pork and beans, and toothpicks, the round and pointy, not the flat and squared." "I'm sorry, Mother. Say again?" He stood in silence for a few moments and then, without saying goodbye, gently folded the cell phone back into its clamshell and slipped it into his coat pocket. He had lived with his mother for 59 years, and it was during times such as these that he drew upon those early memories of fun and sharing, of trips and adventures that took them from the rambling pile of lumber and windows on South Dunker Street and bound them into a mutually protective unit. Next week, he would be 60 years old. "Damn, it's cold," said a voice above his shoulder. Joe's left eye glanced up into an oval red face divided into big features around a pair of squinting eyes set too close to a pug nose. The large mouth wore a grin that could be put away in a drawer until needed the next day. Joe returned his eye to the empty eastbound platform across the tracks. "A lot of angry people here," said the voice. Joe took a half step away. No, I mean it," the voice droned on, rising above to a dry whine. "I was in a bar down the block and heard the trains were running late, so I busted my ass to get over here and make sure I got a seat. I'm Bob Hagenmeyer, sales at Turnbrush and Spratt. Next year, sales manager. A thick paw appeared in front of Joe's chest. Joe's right gloved hand raised up from his coat pocket, gave the paw a 2-finger and thumb tweak, and then scurried back to its burrow. Bob examined his tweaked hand. Quite a grip there. His bulk rocked back and forth, heel and toe. You can have this train stuff, he said. Not for me. No, sir, I'm a car guy. I need the open road. I bet you come down here every day. You look like a downtown guy. That's okay. Live and let live. My caddy choked on a valve today, or I'd be halfway to Westmont as we speak. A sharp, shrill blast of chill wind rushed down the platform, and the 10 pins all seemed to lean as one. I bet you and the little woman have a house in Westmont, Bob said, rubbing his hands together and blowing whiskey breath on them. Joe thought of his mother as the little woman and almost smiled. Bob, keenly attuned to subtle nuances, pounced like a panther. Yeah, and you're proud of that acreage, too. I bet I can make your driveway and walks the pride of the neighborhood. It is my pleasure to sell ground growler gravel graders, the Rolls Royce of gravel graders. He produced a business card. No, thank you, Joe said. Uh-huh. So you do speak English. I was getting a little worried there, Bob said. Say, as long as we're gabbing away here, and mind if I borrow your cell phone to call my girlfriend? She'll be worried about being late. You know how dames are. No, thank you, Joe said. Bob's face froze with his expectant expression pinned in place. His left eye blinked once, twice. Just a quick call. She's the worrying sort. She's got security issues. Bob made a quick glance at his wristwatch and then shook his head, chuckling. Hey, I'm sorry going on like this. I didn't mean to put a pitch on you. Let's start over. My girl is Patricia Fogg. Her professional name is Patchy. Get it? Patchy Fogg. She's in the entertainment business. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whiskey whisper. If I stand her up one more time, she's going to plant her pert keister in some other jerk's lap. What's the harm of one quick call? Joe felt his face heating up as it did when his mother made cutting remarks. She had begun sipping brandy in the evening to get to sleep, she said, but it only made her self-pity rise to the surface, and there was no one else around but Joe. He helped her whenever he knew what she wanted or needed, but she demanded throw the brandy or hinted as though her need was part of some vast puzzle, and Joe was too stupid to understand. Bob's steam was in Joe's face again. It's not like I'm calling Dubai or something, he said, and looked back and then quickly around him to recruit an ally or rally the crowd to his side. But the 10 pins were unmoved. As if he had been digesting Bob's last question, Joe spoke. Germs. Bob's body gave a quick, orgasmic shudder, and his eyes widened. What do I look like? Typhoid Mary? Some kind of leper? Jesus, germs! Joe unleashed. Swine flu. You'll touch my phone and get ear lint on it. Bob leaned down, his scalding breath steaming the side of Joe's face as if he was ironing a shirt. I don't have swine flu. I'm so clean, I'm pristine. He furiously rubbed his ear with his gloved hand and examined the leather. What the hell is ear lint? Joe was restless, relentless. I have allergies. My mother has allergies. I'm not bringing some stranger's ear lint into our home. You live with your mother? Bob cast another anguished look at his watch and then down the track. His head rotated like a battleship turret with muzzles of both eyes locked on Joe. That's who you were talking to, wasn't it? Listen, mothers are forgiving. It's part of the mother's code. Me, I've got a raven-haired sex goddess waiting for me in Westmont. It's your duty as a human being, as a guy, to give me that phone. Joe plunged his hand into his jacket pocket, plugging up the entrance. Bob's face lowered and filled Joe's left eye and part of his right. Bob's voice sputtered from his lips with sticky drops of spittle. You give me that phone, you little worm, you piece of ear lint, or I'll pound you into a wad of junk and no jury on earth would convict me. Without a word, Joe scrabbled the phone out of his pocket and handed it to Bob. Well, say, Bob rocked back, holding his trophy. How hard was that? He held the phone up to his ear, then stabbed a few buttons. He stared at it. Hey, the battery's dead. What good is it? Joe retrieved his phone from Bob's limp glove with his thumb and forefinger as though it was contaminated and dropped it into his pocket. The battery died while Mother was giving me her grocery list. Why didn't you say something? Bob whined. All this time wasted. He stabbed his finger at his watch. It's too late. Patchy fog has blown away. Why? Joe turned his wall-eyed glare full on Bob's face. Life is not a puzzle. With a stiff and trembling arm, Joe pointed to the rear of the platform. There's a payphone right back there. Bob looked to the rear, past the motionless 10-pins. When he looked back, Joe was gone, disappearing wraith-like into the crowd, holding tight to the story he could tell his mother later. In a rush of steel and steam, the Westmont Express arrived, its window squares of light scraping across Bob as he played with the change in his pocket and dreamed of fog in the snow.